Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Honeybee Stamps. I'm using the You're the Keeper stamp set and then the Spring Bind layering frames. And here's the two stars of today's show. This is the Folk Art stencil set and the Daisy Lattice stencil set. And so what we're concentrating on today is using stencils as a focal point. Layering stencils are kind of all the rage right now, and you see them all over the place, and some of them have stamp sets or don't have stamp sets. These ones do not. And they are a little bit of a, they're a little bit lesser expensive, and you guys know how I like getting more out of the things that I have. And so today we're going to talk about how we can use these as focal points without needing any other stamps. So the only stamping that I'm doing today actually is my sentiments. Everything else will be stencils. So what I'm doing here now is I'm using the sticky mat from the Alta New Stamp Wheel as a stencil holder. Love this. Anywho, and all I'm doing is just getting the base layer of the stencils down. So I just picked the lightest color, a lighter color of the colors that I knew I wanted to use in my coloring. And I'm just getting the basic layout of the stencils so I know where I'll be doing my coloring. This stencil set, this Daisy Lattice, has 3 and the Folk Art has 4 stencils. So you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to use for this. I wanted to do 2 different ones that was a bit smaller and one that was a bit larger to show you that you can use this really with quite a few different stencils. So now I'm going to move on to the Folk Art one. And then the other thing that I will be using is, I showed you the Spring Vine layering frames, but I'm also going to be using the layering vintage labels. I use that one all the time. What a great investment that particular die is for me, because I always use it. I think it's such a good one. But yeah, I really wanted to kind of, you guys know I love stamps, don't get me wrong, I totally do. But sometimes it's good to look at things a little bit differently and kind of stretch those supplies. And I try to do that in a way to share with you how to kind of get more maybe out of what you already have. There was another video, I've mentioned this video before, but it's so excellent, it's worth mentioning again, that my friend Dawn did for Honeybee that talks about, what did she call it? It's like selective stenciling, where you just kind of go through and pick them out different ways. I will link to that video in the description below. It's just so good. She just showed so many different ways to do it. So yeah, if you're not a colorer or you don't like alcohol markers or colored pencils, you could totally use colored pencils. I use markers because that's just my preferred medium. If you didn't want to do any of that and you wanted your stencils to have a little bit more dimension, then I would definitely recommend using more than one color when you're doing your stenciling. Add your shading with your stenciling and it will still be a beautiful focal point, even if you're not somebody who likes to color. I do like to color very much, and so I'm going to treat this stencil kind of like no line coloring. So I'm going to use the stenciled portion we already have down with the Distress ink as just my base layer. And then I'm going to go in and add my shading just like I would any other no line image to give them a bit more depth and dimension. I know in my mind what layers I'm going to be cutting out of here, and you'll see towards the end I kind of double check myself to make sure everything is colored, but I did not color this whole background. You could and use both pieces. That would be another way to stretch this even further, so you could actually get 4 cards out of this, depending upon how you cut your dies out. Or you would need, if you don't have dies, you could or you don't have a die cutting machine, you could, trim this out into a square or a rectangle with just a paper trimmer, or an X-Acto knife, whatever you have on hand, and kind of use them as a focal point that way. I am going to have some supporting pieces later on with the Spring Greenery Lovely Layers set. And that's much later. It's a long video. All my videos are long. Who are we kidding? But so, yeah, so we're just going to go through. We're going to color these. I chose pinks, purples, greens, and yellows. And I just stuck with that for both cards. Both cards end up looking similar but different, just to kind of give you guys an idea of the different ways that you can play with this. But of course, I always encourage you to make it your own, to play around with it, and to find something that you like. So even though I did all of my flowers, like in this one, I did all the flowers in pink. Because pink and purple are right next to each other on the color wheel, I'm going to be able to color over those smaller flowers with purple. And I did add a little bit of pink back in there just because I like color variation, but you could do them all purple and it would be fine. So whatever color you start with, you can go kind of one to the left or one to the right on the color wheel without too many issues. So you don't have to have even a lot of inks to do this. Just a limited supply kind of kind of challenge here. So I am doing my voiceover, and this is not, I have to do it right now. There's no choice for me because it's during Jelly Bean's nap time. But there are a lot of things in play. So first things first, I don't even know if you can hear it. I have a relatively decent microphone. It's a, what is it? It's a Blue Yeti. I think that's what it's called. And so I got this a couple of years ago, and it does a fairly good job at not picking up the background noises, but my neighbor is cutting their lawn. My husband is also cutting our lawn. So I got that going on in the background. And then the risk, because my husband is cutting the grass, like I'm the baby taker care of the Jelly Bean, and it's her nap time. So I have her monitor in here, and then Molly was asleep on the floor, and you know she's my old lady, and I can't wake her up to make her move. So I was like, I'm just gonna risk it with the voiceover. So you could hear some baby crying, you could hear some dog barking, you're definitely maybe hear a lawnmower or two. But I have to fit in. I'm a person with a real life, and I can't control all the outside things. I was very blessed this week that while they were doing the deck, the one day that I needed to do my voiceover, they actually took a lunch. So I had the lunch hour to do my voiceover, and then the other day that I needed to do the voiceover, they were done. They were done. So our whole deck is done. They dropped off supplies on Monday, and then they started the deck on Tuesday, and they were out of here Friday by 10:30 in the morning, and the whole thing is done, and it looks amazing. Super happy with it. Very glad to have that portion kind of locked off from the pool. And last night we celebrated Mother's Day with Eric's side of the family. And so while his brother was here, he helped him put the grill and the table and chairs and stuff back on the deck. And so we're good to go. I think the only thing we have left to move is the umbrella. And just for that, we're not quite sure where we're going to put it yet. Eric had the fantastic idea of putting it up against the railing so you could use it no matter if you were on the upper deck or the lower deck. But we're not sure where we're going to put it yet, because we also have this idea for planters that do the lights, like the little lights in between that hang in between the planters. And I actually bought those lights 2 years ago. So they've just been hanging out in the garage waiting to have a home. So hopefully we'll be able to start kind of pulling that stuff together, and then we'll sit, we had to save up our pennies to purchase the deck. It was quite the purchase. But so now we'll be saving up our pennies probably for some new patio furniture, because the patio furniture that we have right now, we actually bought right before we moved into this house, or maybe no, it had to be right before. And we got it off Facebook Marketplace, and it was a great deal, but they're starting to rust. They were already used when we, bought them. And I mean, isn't that how we all start out? When you first start, you don't really have anything nice, and then you just have to save up your pennies and replace things as time goes on. So we're still in that replacing stage. And I mean, I really truly think like as a homeowner, you're always in that stage. You're always just something breaks and you got to replace it and so on and so forth. So here, all of the coloring is done, or so I thought. This is the piece that I'm going to be die cutting out. So I'm double checking to make sure all of my coloring. I saw those two little pink, like accent pieces weren't colored, so I did go back in and color them, and then I just taped this into place, set it aside, and I'm going to move on to the daisy lattice background. And this one is actually quite funny. So I was on the phone with my friend while I was doing this one, and so sometimes like if you don't have, like iPhone has FaceTime, but if you don't have an iPhone, a lot of us Android users use Facebook Messenger to like FaceTime. So sometimes I'm doing that with my friend Jen, who lives in England, and it's lovely to see her. And then I craft while I talk to her. But this time I was on the phone with my friend Lisa, and we were catching up on some things and talking about some business things. And I was in the middle of doing my coloring, and like my phone started ringing in the middle of it. And typically nobody calls me, and I look and I see like my counselor's name, and I was like, oh my gosh, what time is it? So it was like 12:03, and I had a video appointment with her at 12. And I was like, I gotta go, bye. So you'll see when I get there, like to the leaf portion on this card, like all of a sudden it's gonna like just cut out, and then I will come back to it, but there'll be a gradual fade in. But that's because I had to take a break so I could do my my counseling. So for those of you who had asked previously, that person is my hypnotherapist, and so we've done a couple of sessions so far, and I do like her. Unfortunately, she's quite a drive away, like a lot. It's a lot of time when I go in there. So what we've been doing is like every other week I'll drive out there to do a session, because it takes like 3 hours of my day to do it. So it's quite a chunk of time. And then on the off weeks, we do a video so that we can kind of go over and touch base and see how, the last session went, or if I'm noticing any differences or things that maybe we need to tweak to change, because there is no specific protocol for driving anxiety, because you have anxiety for different reasons. So you kind of have to write the script for it as you go. So sometimes you have to tweak that as you're moving along. And so in our the last session in person, she was like, okay, maybe we, take a break and work on some of the other anxiety things. And we'll circle back to this. And then Thursday when I talked to her, she was like, no, I think we should stay, like after talking today, I think we should stay with the driving. So that's the game plan. We're staying with the driving so far. I haven't noticed a noticeable difference, but we will keep on keeping on and see, because she did tell me in the beginning, it could take 6 or 7 sessions. So at this point, we've done 3. We've done 3. 2? We've done 2. I'm sorry, we've done 2 in person. So that's what's going on with that. And so we did get to see Eric's side of the family, obviously our family, still they're my family too, yesterday, and his brother and his our sister-in-law were able to come in. They live just a couple hours away now, so they were able to make it, which was really nice, and it was good to see everybody. And we did our Mother's Day kind of celebration, and we had already purchased his mom's gift. So she wanted a mother's ring, which I think is pretty common. And so she has her kids, and I think her kids and grandkids in her ring. And so there's a jeweler that Eric uses, so he hooked her up with him, the jeweler. And then he met her up there, and they went through and picked everything out. And then when it was time to pick it up, we picked up the bill and then split that with his brother, and that was her Mother's Day gift. So she already had hers. And so I wasn't really expecting, I mean, we were just going to have dinner and hang out. I made lemon blueberry cake. She loves lemon cake. And so I just switched it up a little bit, tried something different. It had blueberry filling, cream cheese frosting. I thought it was pretty good. And nobody else had any complaints except for Peanut, who was like, I don't want to eat the blueberries. Just pick them off, because they were like decorative on the top. Like, I'll just pick them off. And I was like, dude, there's blueberry in this cake. Like, you are not going to be able to pick it off. But I think he actually scraped out his filling and gave it to Aunt Mallory, which is fine. But so we did that. We had a good meal. Here, this one, the coloring is all done. And so I am cutting this at an angle because I liked that pattern better. But you could cut this any way you would like. And that is the vintage layering vintage labels, whichever it is. And then here, while I was at my walk, I told you guys I've been walking more. I was thinking about like how to like bring it all together. And so I decided that I was going to cut out some of the pieces from the spring greenery set just to kind of accent my sentiment. And then in addition to the white ones I cut out, which I am going to color, you'll see here, I also cut out some out of vellum. Vellum is a really great way to add a little something without adding a ton of like bulk or covering up all of the work that you've done. And so these are the same, I cut the same types of branches for the most part. I did cut one that was slightly bigger out of vellum. And then these ones I went through and colored. I did this style, I don't even know what you call it, like a fern type style, in the yellow greens, and then the longer ones, the longer thinner ones, I did in the darker green, just so we would have some color variation. And then I'll have those vellum ones to kind of fill in where I need just a little bit extra, or where I need a place for these to rest. Because without the vellum ones, the problem I was running into is the coloring in the stencil was competing with the coloring in my accent pieces. And so the vellum just kind of breaks that up so that there is a distinct difference between the two, which is incredibly helpful, so that I don't have to add in any other pieces or cover up even more of it. So anyway, back to my Mother's Day gift. I wasn't expecting anything, but it was so sweet and thoughtful of her. My mother-in-law is not crafty at all. But she actually put together for me a shadow box for my first stamp set. Was that not? I mean, that was just so thoughtful. So she ordered the stamp set and she put it in the shadow box, and she like my name and the name of the stamp set, the name of the company. She framed them all out with colored cardstocks and even had some glitter cardstock in there. And she was like, you certainly don't have, and she printed out a picture of the card I made with it. She was like, you don't have to leave it like this, but I wanted you to have the shadow box and like the general, the stamp set, the general concept. So now that all the coloring is done, we are going on to cutting these out. So both of these layering dies have full A2 size pieces. And so I'm using azalea and eggplant. These are both from Hero Art. And so I wanted to show you, you could absolutely put them on white or some other color, but I wanted to do them tone on tone. And you'll see why when we get towards the end, because I had an idea to make them pop. It was very scary because, you've already done all this work, but I really thought that it would work out, and I think it did. So you'll have to tell me at the end of it, like, if you think that that was enough to kind of make them pop, even though they were tone on tone. So the die cuts will add tons of texture, but then we have a way to kind of highlight the focal point a little bit more. Here I am stamping in the Brilliant White Pigment ink from Honeybee. These are the You're the Keeper stamp set. I think is so fantastic. So I picked one that said You're So Kind and one that said Happy Birthday Beautiful, because I always need birthday cards. And now I'm going to heat emboss this with some white detail embossing powder, and then I will cut them out with their coordinating dies, and then we will start building. So anyway, I just thought it was incredibly thoughtful of her because I know crafting is kind of outside her comfort zone, and she did it for me anyway. And so I will probably actually put in the card, like the first card that I made with it, I will probably put that card in the shadow box, in the stamp set and stuff. But it was very sweet and totally unexpected. So here I've laid everything out. I'm happy with the way that it's looking. And so in order to make sure that I don't move any of this, I am going to use my press and seal to pick it up. I just have 2 kind of smaller pieces. Now it did also pick up the stenciled background, even though I didn't need it to. I was like, it's easier than trying, like I'll just peel it off. It'll be fine. So I just flipped that over and then picked them both up with press and seal. I'm using my Honeybee Precision Glue to glue down these pieces. Another way you could do this, which I think would be totally amazing, is you could do the tone on tone, but cut out a couple pieces of white to stack it up and give it a little bit more weight and height, and then do your, stenciled pieces on top of that. I knew that I was going to pop up my stenciled pieces, so I didn't do that. But if you didn't want to go through all the trouble of popping up the individual pieces, I think that would be amazing. Plus, you'd be able to see like the white from the sides, and I think that would be fantastic. So now they don't look like much of anything because they're tone on tone and it's difficult to see that kind of design. But hang tight, my people. We are going to get there. So I did, like I said, pop these up on foam for both of the pieces, and once I got the foam on there, I just peeled it off the press and seal so that I could line it up on the background, the card front, with no issues. And I think that these came out, I mean, really, you can see the stenciled pieces. They're obviously like what you first look at, and the other pieces just act like accents. And I think it's just a great way to kind of get more bang for your buck, man. Like, I think almost all of us at this point have stencils because they're so popular, and Honeybee has so many good ones. So for the vellum, I'm only adding glue to the vellum in the places that it's going to be covered up by another piece of cardstock. So some parts of it will be more secure, like the parts that are behind the sentiment and stuff, and other parts of it will kind of be a little bit more popped up because they don't have as much adhesive. But I don't think there's any fear of them falling off, coming off, anything like that. So once I have those down, then I will pick up the other 2 layers. I will add glue to those colored pieces, and then I will glue them down, and then I will add glue to my sentiment, and I will glue that down. The little hinge method for press and seal works really, really well for me. It's been quite the game changer for me to be more inclined to use die cuts, whereas before I would just get frustrated with them moving around on me or me not being able to get my arrangement correct. So the press and seal is incredibly, incredibly helpful. So here, just adding the glue to the sentiment, and then I'm not going to show you because it's already almost a 30-minute video. I'm not going to show you the building of the other card, but I did exactly the same thing with the press and seal. The only thing I changed, and here, you guys know I like to leave my boo-boos in. So this top fern piece was not out as far as I needed it to be in order for my design to be balanced. So I needed part of it to be hanging off, and it just wasn't. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in another vellum fern piece so that it hangs off. And then I'm also going to take the thinner, more vine-like greenery and kind of pull that down a little bit so it's hanging off a little more. So I'll tuck this behind that so that it overlaps the purple that like in the background. And then because I had cut and colored more than I needed, I have this other fern piece that's already colored. So rather than try to pull the one in the background off, almost for sure ripping my paper, I'm just going to glue this fern right over top of the other one. So that way the arrangement still stays as I originally intended it to be, where parts of it are hanging off, without me having to go in and rip everything apart, because that's always kind of scary. So then here I put the sentiment on, And the next thing I did was add a couple of gemstones. I pulled out a few different honeybee sets of gemstones. I've told you before, their gemstones are my favorite. And I thought I would use my crystal katana for kind of like placing them. But because they are stickers, they're gem stickers, it didn't really work as well for the wax tip. But I did use the other end to kind of help put them in place. And I used the Bee Bliss gem stickers, the pink ones. Here's how we're going to make these little guys pop. The white gel pen. You guys know I love a white gel pen. This is the number 10. And so it means it's a little bit wider. But so I added some white highlights into the centers of the flowers like I would normally do. And then I'm going to use it to accent. Like you can see, I'm nervous. I was nervous. I was afraid I put this whole thing together and I was about to ruin it. But I don't think I did. I think it's actually really cute. So because it is tone on tone and you kind of lose those accent pieces a little bit, I decided that I was going to go in with the white gel pen and just trace the designs that were already there. For this one with the vintage labels, it has little dots that are embossed into it as well as a detail line. So I went in with the white gel pen. I went right over the dots, just dotted my little white gel pen right over it. Now you could do just the dots. You could do just the line. I did both of them because I thought like it really kind of brought it together. But you could do one or the other. So the white gel pen, again, a game-changing tool that is relatively inexpensive that can help you kind of stretch what you already have and give it a different look. Amazing. I think that they are super cute. So after the white gel pen addition, to me, the focal points really pop quite a bit more. You can still see that beautiful stenciling. I'm going to add some shimmer to my flowers. Should I have done it before I built the card? Probably, but I always say that because it's always something I do at the very end. And then this is both cards. So please let me know what you think. I'm so interested to hear if you'll be giving this a try. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.